They told you the serpent in Eden was just a snake. Think again. What if I told you that creature was never meant to crawl until it fell? Behind that ancient story hides a secret one that unlocks a war still raging around you today. This isn't just about Adam and Eve. It's about you, about the choices you make, about a spiritual entity that once shined like a star and now slithers in the shadows. Stay with me, because once you see this truth, you can't unsee it. You know that image of a slithering snake wrapped around a tree in Eden? Yeah, let's just pause that movie for a second. The original Hebrew word used there is nachash. That word doesn't just mean snake. It carries layers of meaning like shining one, diviner, or even enchanter. We're not talking about your average garden snake here. This was a spiritual entity, far more complex and intelligent than some cold-blooded creature with scales. Now, imagine if a talking iguana popped up in your backyard. Chances are you'd freak out, not casually strike up a conversation. But Eve didn't flinch. Why? Because this wasn't weird for her. That tells us something crucial. The being she interacted with wasn't slithering through the bushes like a sneaky animal. It was likely radiant, persuasive, and familiar. This nachash wasn't crawling yet. It was still in a form that commanded attention. Some ancient texts even suggest this entity had a dazzling presence, something closer to an angel than an animal. That flips the script. Right, a being like that wouldn't be just charming, it'd be dangerous in the most deceptive way possible. This is where the spiritual warfare begins to peek through. It wasn't just temptation, it was infiltration. A celestial con artist wearing a dazzling disguise. Think of it this way. The most dangerous lies are the ones that look most like the truth. This serpent had the tools of manipulation that weren't just intellectual, they were spiritual. He didn't just speak, he seduced. The same way propaganda today doesn't just inform you, it shapes how you think. Just like the serpent shaped Eve's perception with just a few calculated words. And let's not pretend this was some ancient fluke. The same tactics are used in modern marketing, politics, and even social media. The whisper that says, "You deserve this," or "You're missing out," isn't new. It's just wearing different clothes now. That nachash spirit, still very active, just digital now, and still aiming to lead people down the same spiral of spiritual degradation. Notice how it didn't force anything. No threats, no lightning bolts, just a gentle nudge toward a false version of truth. That's the kind of deception that seeps into your soul. Like when you slowly start justifying decisions that go against your values. It's just once. No one will know. Sound familiar? It's always the same script, just different actors. When people imagine evil, they think of something grotesque. But the serpent's strength wasn't in looking terrifying, it was in looking trustworthy. That's the real danger. It didn't need to roar. It just had to whisper the right words at the right time. And that's what led humanity into a spiritual free fall. Not a bite, but a belief. What's wild is this being was once radiant. Before the fall, it had status. But pride brought it crashing down, and its glory turned into humiliation. That same fall is echoed every time someone trades truth for illusion. And if Eden was the stage for this cosmic betrayal, what kind of place was it, really? Let's get one thing straight, in wasn't just a pretty garden with exotic fruits and a nice breeze. Nah, that place was loaded with spiritual meaning. It was more like a divine headquarters, a sacred temple where heaven and earth kissed. Think of it as the original meeting point between the creator and his creation. That's why the nachash wasn't out of place there. Eden wasn't just natural, it was supernatural. Now imagine this, a temple without walls, yet filled with glory. That's Eden. You didn't need a GPS to find God, his presence dwelt there. Not just for irrigation, not just for shade. Every detail had spiritual weight. It's like walking into a cathedral where even the echo of your footsteps feels sacred. That's the level of holiness we're talking about. Ezekiel 28 gives us a glimpse into Eden as more than a garden. It hints at a holy mountain, full of jewels and divine fire. You see the overlap? It wasn't a random park with weird snakes, it was a cosmic temple. That's why spiritual beings like the nachash were there. And Eve, she was probably more used to spiritual interaction than we think. It wasn't just the fruit she found normal, it was the company. Think about how temples work. They're built as places of encounter. So Eden wasn't a hiding place. It was a hosting place, a place of communion, not confusion. That's why what happened there was such a betrayal. You don't expect treason in a sanctuary. And that makes the fall all the more tragic, because it happened in the middle of what was supposed to be sacred space. Have you ever been in a place that just feels holy? Maybe it's a chapel, maybe a quiet forest, but something in your soul knows it's not just about the scenery. That's Eden, but amplified. That's the environment the serpent defiled. That's why his act wasn't just disobedience, it was desecration, a spiritual attack right in the core of divine territory. And this gives us another layer. Temples are also places of priesthood. Humanity wasn't just there to relax, we were there to rule, reflect God's image, and steward creation. But instead of standing guard like priests, Adam and Eve let in the intruder. Can you imagine a security guard opening the door for the thief? That's what went down. It wasn't ignorance, it was a tragic choice. Today, many people don't realize they're living temples too. Your mind, your heart, your body, it's supposed to host something holy. But just like Eden, it can be invaded if you're not vigilant. That's why protecting your spiritual space matters. It's like setting boundaries in real life. With people, with habits, with content you consume. You're not just scrolling, you're opening doors. And once that door was cracked open in Eden, things unraveled fast. The serpent had access. The humans lost alignment. And suddenly, the garden wasn't just beautiful, it was broken. And in the ruins of what was once sacred, a bigger war began, one that would span generations and lead straight to the book of Revelation. Here's where things get spicy, because that serpent in Eden, he wasn't just some clever rep. Revelation 12:09 and 22 to pull back the curtain and call him out by name. Satan, the nachash, wasn't acting alone. He was on assignment. What happened in Eden wasn't just a mistake, it was an ambush, a strategic move in a much bigger, older war between light and darkness. This serpent wasn't new to rebellion. He'd already tried to exalt himself above God's throne, and Eden was just the next stage in his sabotage plan. But instead of fighting angels in the heavens, now he was corrupting image bearers on earth. The battlefield shifted, but the goals stayed the same. Dethrone the Creator by desecrating his creation. Smooth move, but not new. And let's not forget, this wasn't a fair fight. The serpent didn't show up waving a red flag. He came with subtlety, wrapped in deception, not force. That's his classic strategy. Twist the truth, sow confusion, make evil look wise. It's like malware who don't realize what has been installed until it's already wrecking the system. That's what happened to Eve. And to this day, that tactic hasn't changed. When you realize that the serpent was Satan himself, Eden becomes a war zone in disguise. It wasn't just two humans and a tree, it was spiritual warfare playing out in real time. The fall wasn't random, it was a tactical hit on humanity's destiny. And by convincing Eve to eat, Satan tried to steal what was meant for the children of God. Authority, intimacy, purpose. Think about it. If Satan could corrupt the very first humans in God's sacred space, he could corrupt the entire line that would come from them, that includes you. That's the real weight of Eden. It wasn't just a past event, it was a launchpad for future conflict. Your spiritual battles today, they echo from that same ancient rebellion. Eden was just the opening act. But here's the wild part: Satan didn't come dressed like a devil. He came as something appealing, maybe even beautiful, a shining being, like the word nachash suggests. That's how deception works. It wears masks, and you can bet that if the enemy showed up today, he'd look more like a motivational speaker than a monster. That's why spiritual discernment is survival. If we zoom out, the serpent in Eden wasn't just a plot. Twisty was the villain in disguise. He had been cast down, spiritually degraded, humiliated, and now he was set on dragging others down with him. And who better to target than the ones made in God's image? The whole thing was personal. And when the fall happened, it wasn't just about disobedience, it was about allegiance. But Satan underestimated something huge. Even in Eden, God had a counterattack ready, a promise hidden in the fallout, a whisper of redemption, a seed that would crush the serpent's head. And with that, the story shifts, because now we're not just talking about a fall, we're talking about a comeback. Most people read "on your belly you shall go" and picture a snake losing its legs. But that's this wasn't zoology, it was symbolic warfare. God wasn't just punishing a reptile, he was humiliating a celestial being. Picture it, a once radiant entity now sentenced to crawl in shame. It was the divine version of stripping a fallen general of his rank and sending him into exile. Dust you shall eat wasn't about diet, it was a decree of spiritual degradation. In ancient language, to eat dust meant utter defeat. The nachash had been part of the divine council, possibly even among the sons of God mentioned in Job. But after Eden, he was brought low, crushed not just physically but status-wise, positionally. This wasn't some nature documentary. This was courtroom judgment. A rebellion had occurred in God's sacred temple, and the verdict came swift and heavy. And get this, Adam and Eve weren't the only ones who heard the sentence. The whole spiritual realm was watching. This curse was God's way of saying, you thought you'd rise above me. Now, crawl beneath everything I've made. And here's where it hits us. Humiliation is Satan's eternal mark. From Eden to Apocalypse, he carries the stigma of that fall. Every attempt he makes to elevate himself ends in disgrace. Every kingdom he tries to build is made of sand. That's why pride is his favorite trap. It mirrors his own story. And the moment we chase elevation without submission, we walk into the same curse. So what does this symbolic crawling look like today? It's the way evil hides in systems that once looked noble. It's the way deception slithers into institutions, relationships, and even beliefs that seem harmless. Evil no longer roars, it whispers. Satan might not be crawling on a literal belly, but spiritually, he's lower than low, feeding off the dust of corrupted hearts. And here's a twist, God let the serpent live. He didn't annihilate him right then and there. Why? Because the story wasn't over. The curse wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new spiritual trajectory, where the villain would serve as a backdrop to reveal redemption. Satan would be allowed to crawl, but his head, one day it would be crushed. There's something humbling in that. Even in judgment, God speaks hope. He doesn't just punish you. The curse contains a promise, a clue that this war has an expiration date. That humiliation the serpent received, it foreshadows his final defeat. And you, right now, are living in the middle of that prophecy, right between the curse and the comeback. Because if the serpent's curse was symbolic, then the battle that followed is spiritually real. What happened in Eden was a myth. It was a declaration of war. And that war didn't stop in Genesis. It's still happening. It's happening in headlines, in homes, in hearts. And the question hanging in the air is, whose seed are you standing with? You know what's wild? That cryptic line in Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between your seed and her seed, wasn't just poetic language. It was warfare prophecy. God declared that a cosmic clash had just begun. And spoiler alert, you're not a spectator, you're in it. This isn't history, it's your present battleground. Think about it. Every time you feel torn between integrity and compromise, between truth and comfort, you're experiencing the fallout of Eden. That same serpent, still slithering, still whispering half-truths. But now, instead of one tree in a garden, there are temptations in every scroll, every screen, every choice you make before bed. And here's what's deeper: this seed language isn't just about genealogy, it's allegiance. Spiritually speaking, you're aligning with someone, either the seed of the woman truth, light, redemption through Jesus, or the seed of the serpent rebellion, ego, deception. There's no neutral not in this war. Even passivity is a choice. That's why spiritual warfare isn't just casting out demons, it's daily decisions. It's forgiving when bitterness feels more justified. It's guarding your heart from envy on Instagram. It's protecting your peace when gossip comes dressed as concern. Real warfare happens in the small things, when no one's clapping, no one's watching. Jesus didn't come just to save you from sin. He came to crush the serpent's head. That's not a metaphor. That's mission. The Protevangelium promised a bruised heel and a shattered skull. Jesus took the bruises on the cross at the grave, and in doing so, guaranteed your victory. But victory doesn't mean comfort. It means combat with hope. Satan knows his time is short, which means the attacks get more subtle, more strategic. Ever notice how apathy sneaks in during your greatest blessings? That's not coincidence. It's war tactic. The serpent doesn't need to roar when a whisper will destroy you. Here's a practical layer. Fill your life with truth, not just good vibes, eternal truth. Read the Gospels like your soul depends on it, because it does. Memorize promises. Sing scripture. Surround yourself with people who sharpen you, not soothe your sin. Spiritual warfare isn't spooky, it's intentionality with fire. So yeah, this war is old, but it's still live. And every moment you choose love over pride, light over darkness, truth over comfort. You strike another blow. The serpent may still crawl, but he's losing ground. And there's one more thing, this battle you're in. It's part of a bigger redemption arc that flips the whole narrative. As we've explored, the serpent in Eden wasn't just an ordinary creature. It was a spiritual entity that marked the beginning of a war between light and darkness, a conflict that continues today. Genesis 3:15, often called the first prophecy, reveals the tension between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. This is more than a historical event. It's a spiritual battle that influences every aspect of our lives. The curse that fell upon the serpent was not just punishment, but a sign of humiliation, a reminder of the fallen nature of sin and rebellion. Satan's spiritual degradation began in the Garden of Eden, but its impact reached far beyond that moment. The humility that he experienced was not just physical but spiritual, representing the destruction of his intended greatness. Jesus' role in this story is crucial. He was the promised seed who came to crush the serpent's head and bring redemption to all who would believe in him. His victory on the cross was the ultimate response to the serpent's rebellion. Through Christ, we are given the power to overcome evil and restore what was lost in Eden. This isn't just a tale of the past. It's the victory that defines our future. But here's where it gets real. The battle isn't over. Every day, we re-faced with choices that align us with either the seed of the woman or the seed of the serpent. These aren't just symbolic ideas, they're forces that shape our actions, our hearts, and our destinies. The war continues in our lives, but with the wisdom of the Word, we can stand firm against the enemy and live in the victory that Jesus secured for us. If this message resonates with you and you want to dive deeper into these truths, don't forget to subscribe to Light of Grace. This channel is all about shedding light on the mysteries of Scripture and equipping you with the knowledge to navigate this spiritual war. Click the bell so you never miss an episode, and let's continue growing in faith together.